Welcome to Deep Look, live on YouTube, Tuesdays, noon Eastern. What's up, everybody? I'm Charlie Eisenhood, editor of Ultiworld, joined by Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner on this Tuesday, January 28th. College Ultimate is actually here. We're back. We've got games. We got stuff to talk about. We got a preview coming up for warm-up, SBI in the books. Man, it's going to be a fun episode. Keith, what's going on?
It's all happening, Charlie. We have arrived at a new year of College Ultimate. We made it all the way from the end of last College Ultimate season, from the last time that we were here to this year. And somebody else made it all the way from last year into this year at this special date. And that's our own Charlie Eisenhood. It's your birthday. You have done it. You have managed to make it another 365. And we are glad for it. So happy birthday, old Chuck. Give us a thumbs up as a happy birthday gift for Charlie. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button.
If you don't like and subscribe,
you're happy for
you're ruining my birthday.
I like that we really increased the stakes.
Yeah, Keith, I'm 36. 2 rounds of disc golf. Divisible by many numbers. It's a good one. It's crazy to think about that, like, when I was first starting Ultiworld and I was going to college tournaments, like, I was basically a college-aged kid. I mean, I was, 22. And now I'm 36. And College Ultimate is just as fun as it was back then, if not better. So these days, I'm not at the tournaments quite as much as I used to be, but love following along. And it's easier than ever to watch the entire college season from the comfort of your own home. Make sure you get yourself a subscription. We've got 2 cameras headed out to warm up this weekend. So big streaming coming up. We'll talk about the streaming schedule and the schedule for warm up a little bit later in the show. Before we get into SBI and a lot of other stuff this episode, we have our trivia question of the week.
We're back with another Guess the Player for
let's
the birthday
go.
boy here, Charlie Eisenhood. So for those of you joining us for the first time for Guess the Player, I'm going to give more and more hints about the identity of this player. I'll give you some information about their playing career or biographical information, and we'll see how long it takes Charlie to guess. And you can play at home or along in the chat. See if you can help Charlie with the answer if you're here live in the chat. So today's Guess the Player is an Ultimate Hall of Famer.
Okay.
With 7 club titles and a World Games title in 2009. And I guess I'll give you one more hint to start.
7 club titles?
UCSD alum. 7 club titles, UCSD alum, Hall of Famer, World Games winner.
Fury. World Games 09. Oof. I'm trying to remember, like, who the Fury players on the World Games, like, it's just like a little before my memory bank. So it's like a little hard for me to draw on, like, who were the Fury players on the team at that time. But I guess I'll just guess Alex Snyder. Like, she has more titles than that, though. So I don't think it's going to be her.
Ready for your next hint?
I guess so.
All right, so here's a 2-pack of hints. This person last played in Prime Club, my self-created term for the club divisions, is not excluding like Masters and stuff like that. Prime Club with LOL, and quote,
that doesn't help me.
She was the best defender in the division at her peak, and that's from her Hall of Fame write-up.
Best defender in the division. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that's going to help me either. Damn, I feel like I mean, I'm obviously going to know the name of this person. It's just like so hard to pull the name, because like knowing they're on LOL I already knew they were on Fury. Like that's not the problem here for me. That's not the hint that I need. But I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to pull up this name. All right, let's get another hint. I got
2 more pairs of hints. Next
probably other people in the same boat as me.
this person has won all club selection in 2014.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you know that they were
I
around all the
definitely know
way
the
into
name.
2014, relevant.
Yeah. Yep.
And they scored a Callahan to begin the comeback, to spark the comeback, the legendary
Against Riot.
10-1 deficit. They scored a Callahan to
Oh.
help spark that
Oh my
comeback.
gosh. Like the problem is this is not helping me, but I like
Because
I
I'm giving
already
you
like
info that you already know.
but I mean it's all awesome. It's like
Yeah,
legend
part of
stuff,
it's I
but
wanna I
I'm
wanna
just trying to think.
educate I wanna educate
Alicia
people.
White? No, but she wasn't a great defender, was she?
Was
I'm being
she?
educated. I'm being educated. I'm going Alicia White then.
Alright. You are correct. It is Alicia White. You've done it.
I didn't know
The
she was
last 2
that
hints
good
were
as a
gonna be,
defender.
made semis with Molly Brown, Scandal, and Fury. I feel like that would have been
Okay,
helped
that
you
would
get
help
there.
me for
And,
sure.
the nickname is a letter and a number. That's A1, Alicia White. Hall of Famer with the class of 22.
I guess I just didn't realize because I feel like I know her as an offensive player primarily. But maybe that's because I knew her as a late stage career where like
Right.
she was playing on O lines. But
Yep.
what a
I totally
boss.
think that's right. Absolutely. An all-timer, an all-time one of the greats to play the game. So, glad to show some love and respect
Won a
to A1.
title, won a title with UCSD as a sophomore, by the way.
Mhm.
7 titles, won gold at WUGC, WUCC, and World Games. 4 more titles at the Masters and Grandmasters levels. Her club teams were in the semifinals or finals every single year from 2005 to 2016. That is crazy. Maddie sang, quote, "She is hands down one of the best ever to play our game. Her ability to elevate the play of whatever team she was playing for is unparalleled." Amazing.
Absolute beast.
Absolute
Glad that
beast.
we got to catch still her playing at a high level in the tail end of her career as we got into kind of the media age of Ultimate.
And she was still really good in those like
Yes.
early, like the early 2010s.
When
Awesome.
she stopped playing with, like, elite, like, national level club teams, like, she was still very good.
Still very good. All right, let's get on to the Santa Barbara invite. Your champions in the women's division, British Columbia, going undefeated to take it down. And in the men's division, Cal Poly Slow, top seeded. They did drop a game to BYU in the opener, a classic SBI type of moment. But they went on to win all of the rest of their games and take down the title over Cal of all teams. So much to get to, Keith. I mean, the women's division was absolutely loaded, and we saw strong performances from all those top teams: Oregon, Carleton, Colorado, of course, UBC. I guess I'm curious, like, what stood out to you from this weekend? We can let's skip the weather talk. I know it was a sloppy mess early, like the semifinals round in particular on Sunday. But what do you feel like you're taking away from? We'll start on the women's division and those really strong teams at the top, top 5 in the division.
Well, because those top teams looked really strong, I think it's pretty meaningful for UBC to walk out with this win over a field this good. I think Colorado and Oregon probably played the game of the tournament in on the first day of play, and they both looked pretty good. Still, everybody's still working through the kinks. I mean, it's January still. For all intents and purposes, like it feels a little bit like fall, but I thought the level of play was fairly high, and for UBC to be able to come out and outperform Carleton, Colorado, Oregon, I thought UCSB and UCSD also flashed some really good things. Uh, for them to get there, I think it speaks very highly of their championship contention. Although I think Oregon and Colorado, and I didn't get to see a lot of Carleton, so I'd say the jury's still out on them. But there's every reason to believe that they're going to be top tier, and we're going to see them at Queen City. But I think UBC, Colorado, and Oregon in particular all looked like they had the goods, and we had enough reps to see them. Uh, there are some down the line. There's some interesting stories. You mentioned that all the top teams perform well. Well, there's one team that kind of sticks out
Except
like a sore
one.
thumb, and had some people
Yeah.
talking, which was Stanford, who opened the tournament with a score that people had to ask, is this entered correctly? That's never a good sign. Utah
Never good.
13-5 over Stanford in their season opener. I usually will give teams a pass for their first game of the season, but that's not a good score. That's a bad score. Utah is a pretty good team, but that's not where you want to be if you're thinking about, can we contend for a title? Can we be a semifinals team again? With
Well,
Stanford, they they
and,
they corrected a little bit in the weekend. They didn't have an impressive weekend, but tough start.
did they correct? I mean, look, they're still a good team. I think they still could be a nationals team potentially. We got to keep in mind how strong the West is. But they go 11-9 over UVic. They lose to UCSD in pre-quarters 11-10, and then they beat Santa Cruz 8-7. So playing a lot of close games, except for that Utah loss. It definitely, and they didn't look great in the fall. I feel like we need to reset expectations for this team. It's really, what a weird team Stanford is, because we'll come into a year and be like, they're not going to be that good, and then they're like a semifinalist at nationals team, and then we're like all hyped up about how good they're going to be, and they come out and get blasted by a team that barely made nationals. They got lucky to make nationals. So I don't know what's going on, but I think it
I mean,
shows
is
you
there
that
literally any team you have more faith in getting better between now and May? Like,
no.
of course not.
No. I mean, I know they're going to get better, but I do think this has to reset expectations a little bit, right? If they're a semifinals level team again, I do not expect we would have seen this kind of opener. I'm sure they're still
That's
going to
It's
be at
going to be
nationals.
interesting. It's going to be interesting in the Southwest. I mean, there were some, like I said, flashes from San Diego and Santa Barbara. Devin Quinn is a monster and
Beast.
looks ready to take another All American spot. Just I said in the Discord, like, I wish I could see her career stats because she scores a lot. She scores a lot of goals. And Cal Poly Slow also had a nice weekend. So the Southwest is going to be very, very interesting, especially if Stanford is kind of seeding the potential top spot. The race is on, I think. We could get to Southwest regionals and feel like there could be like 4 or 5 teams that could finish first.
Uh, I want to talk a little bit about Oregon. You mentioned that Colorado game. Colorado getting the 12-11 win. Oregon wins the rest of their games, including some really nice results. I mean, 11-6 over Santa Barbara that's impressive. 10-8 over Carleton in a very sloppy semi. And then they lose 11-8 to UBC. Do you think that UBC, given the weather and everything else, are they clearly the favorite? And like, should they be the number one team in the country right now after this Oregon win?
Well, we haven't seen Vermont yet, who's the current number one. We have seen UNC, but not against
They
particularly
smoked
strong
everybody
competition.
at the
Yeah,
Carolina kickoff this weekend. No, they didn't
I
have
think it
big
would be
competition.
justifiable. I think it would be justifiable to put UBC in first, given the results that they had this weekend. I think Oregon was really in control of that semifinal against Carleton, although it was in a ton of rain. They came out, they went up 5-1 or something like that. I think 10-8 makes that game look a little closer than it felt. But again, in those sloppy conditions, it's tough to say. But UBC, they look the part of a top level team. They look really confident right now. They have a lot of talent. It was not like, oh, it's the Miki Kurahashi show. They had a number of other players who were out there making plays. So I think Claire Wang is looks like she's going to have a great year. Riel Wong, Amelie Marshall. And I think that they have a strong group around Miki Kurahashi as well. So they have the stars, they have the depth. I think there's a lot to like about UBC, but I think UBC's got to be the favorite in the Northwest. And certainly a title contender. But I think Oregon looks like they have the chops to be a semifinal team. They look like a bit of a work in progress, and still the talent just kind of jumps off the page. Miko Magna was tremendous throughout the tournament. Trout Waybrights and Cyrus Linkfield, like, we know what they can do. They're all American quality players. Trout Waybright's probably going to be in the Pody conversation this year, and they go well beyond that kind of trio that you're looking at. They certainly have a lot more to add to that group. So I think Oregon looks very fierce.
For sure. Let's bounce over to the men's side. Cal Poly Slow getting the win. I know that's no surprise. I mean, we both picked Slow. Like, they were clearly the favorite coming in. I got to say, the big story for me is Cal. I mean, Dexter Clyburn and company. I mean, this is maybe the best version of Cal that we've seen. I mean, they blew everybody else that they played out. They beat Utah 13-9. They beat UBC 12-4. And, who knows what happens in that final if they're not playing a super shortened game. The final score is 7-4 to SLO. I'm super excited about what this team can do, because neither of us really even considered them as a finalist, because it felt like they lost a little too much talent, but maybe we're just wrong.
That I think we have to start there. That we have to eat some crow on underestimating this team's ability to bounce back from the losses from last year. They came out. They did run the famed calzone, but it wasn't the only thing that they were doing. That was not why I felt like they were winning games. At least when they were on the live stream, the offense has plenty of firepower to work with. I think that they did a nice job. I think that their resume is maybe not as strong as you would like. Uh, I think beating Utah, that looks good. Illinois didn't win any of their pool play games and got into the bracket because BYU was in their pool, and then they did win their pre-quarter against Utah Valley. So credit to Illinois for that. I don't want to totally take them out of the picture. And then UBC was like very beat up by the time that I think that they actually played against UBC. But credit to Cal. It's a great start. I certainly didn't expect it. They look a lot further ahead of where I expected them to be. And SLO, I think SLO, I don't know exactly if I don't think I feel better about them after this weekend. And they play a close semifinal with Washington. That was in the rain. They beat Utah Valley. They pulled away in the end of that game. They lose to BYU in the opener. I know it's a little funky when they play BYU, but I also just like watch them get beat by the same deep cut, like 4 separate points for scores. And maybe that's a little fall, like first game. We're not going into our full system yet. We're like making adjustments kind of stuff. But the talent's obviously there. Kyle Liu, Alex Nelson, Anton Orm, like that's a trio that few teams are going to be able to put 3 players on the field that good. Max Gade's going to be one of the best defenders in the division this year. SLO's still a strong team, but I don't necessarily feel better about them on the whole after this tournament.
A team I do feel better about. Just quickly, I agree with you. I think they met expectations but didn't exceed them. Losing to BYU is,
and the loss to BYU is tough.
It's a little bit of a concern, right? Like, not hugely, but BYU.
We're going to find out more in Florida warm up of BYU.
They've always been a good matchup for SLO. They have always been a good matchup for SLO, going back years that they've been playing this game on the Friday night to kind of kick off the college season. Washington, I mean, stock up, baby. They go 4-1. They beat a buzzy Santa Cruz team by 5. They beat BYU 13-10. They beat UBC. They crush UVic, and they lose by 2 to Cal Poly. So, I think there was understandably like kind of question marks about how good are they going to be. They have a good recruiting class, but they lose Jack Brown. What's it going to balance out as? And it really looks like the depth and the kind of like the baseline level of this team is higher than we've seen it in a long time. And that for them to come out and have such a good start, to me, is a great sign about what this team's capable of. This could be a bracketed nationals team, 100%.
Not the first time we've said that about the Sun Dodgers, but I think you should be excited after this performance. We kind of had them in a mismatch of teams in the Northwest, and this helps push them a little bit forward. And we did see Oregon and Oregon State at PacCon. They looked pretty close together, and Western Washington not far behind them. So I still think that the Northwest is going to be crowded, but I think you can still put Washington above right now, where you have your UVics, your Utah Valleys, your UBCs. So they are a firm team that could earn a bid and capitalize on that. But man, the Northwest is going to be really tough to get out of.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to bids. I think, like, did this Northwest do enough for themselves this weekend? That's going to be a big question that I have. Of course, there's always the BYU. What are they going to do? Because they're obviously in a good spot with the SLO win. They have a big test coming up this weekend at warm up. I mean, they do this crazy gauntlet every year. It seems like play SBI, Friday night games, packed Saturday. Then they go immediately out to warm up 6 days later and play 8 games in 2 days. And I mean, a couple times they've won them all or gone 7-1. I don't think I have those expectations for them this weekend. The level of play at warm up is going to be on average higher than what we saw this weekend. But like obviously Oregon's going to be great. Oregon State doing fine. We're still in the top 10 coming out of this weekend. We've got BYU, we've got UBC, we've got this Washington team. I mean, 4 bids doesn't feel impossible.
No, it definitely does not. I don't know where they're going to come from, but there's going to be competition on the margins. I think you're not going to see 4 teams like really confidently in there, and maybe they're fighting for a 5th. But they have the talent if the teams can perform to the levels. They're going to need to find some measure of consistency.
What else stands out to you on the men's side?
Yeah, kind of the mixed results of the other teams, past that point. A bit of a disappointing start for Utah, Utah Valley, up and down. So I think that, Santa Cruz, you talked about them potentially being buzzy. They come out, kind of lay an egg against Washington, who maybe is just better than we thought, but Santa Cruz did not look good in that opener. But again, first game of the weekend, they ended up bouncing back and giving UBC a good game. They end up losing to UVic. They beat Utah, although those consolation rating rounds not telling me much. So there's the jury's still out, I'd say, on these other Northwest teams, because that's the kind of inconsistency I think I'm looking at and expecting from these teams that kind of makes it harder for them to get into that bid conversation because they end up stuck all clumped together around the line.
Yeah, I think the all the Santa Cruz hype. You almost wonder if it gets to the team a little bit, and they feel like, oh yeah, we're about to be awesome this season, and they look like high regionals team right now. If I'm being honest, I think they could make nationals, but it's going to take some work, and they took a couple of losses to UBC and Victoria. That's not good because that's bid points flowing north. And I mean, obviously they're going to need to get a bid unless they can figure out a way to upset Cal. I have a very hard time seeing them beating Cal Poly Slow, and so a lot to be determined yet. It's very, very early. I think Santa Cruz looks like they could be a nationals team, but work to be done. Work to be done. Any final thoughts on the SBI?
Overall, a lot of fun to watch. I wish we hadn't gotten the rain on Sunday, but even if the play wasn't maxed out, of course teams are working through their early season kinks. But all in all, the games were fun to watch, and there were some really good ones in there.
Yeah, I think the only other big thing is the schedule was kind of funky. They did clipped pools, so they
There was
did
definitely some griping about this.
I mean, a lot of teams, if you won your pool, you only had 2 games on Saturday. So I don't know. I guess they had gotten feedback. It was too many games. Fields were a little narrow. And so they corrected by making bigger fields, which all tournaments of this caliber should be played on full width, full length fields. And then they did these clip pools, but they also cut the number of teams down. But what that meant is that some teams only got 5 games on the weekend. And that's just,
Some got 4.
I'm sorry. Did some only get 4? Oh my goodness. That would be very frustrating.
I don't even.
If you traveled from far and got 4 games, you got it, and the weather sucks on Sunday. That's the kind of thing that makes you not want to come back to a tournament the next year.
UPenn in the women's division played 4 games, and I don't think that even. I don't think they had something canceled. I think that was their schedule, and then those games got shortened, so they played 3 games where there were 13 total points.
So yeah, Penn played Oregon and Cal Poly in their pool. They lost both of those games, so that was it for them for the day. And then in consolation, they were only scheduled for 2 games. And those games were 7-6, 7-6. And they come all the way from the East Coast. Not great. Not great. I don't know why they clipped the pools on top of also reducing the number of teams, because they could have just played normal pool play. Everybody gets 3 games, and then you play probably 3, but maybe 4 games if you win out from pre-quarters or something.
mean, it could
kind
have
of a
been
more
field
traditional
restrictions.
format.
It could have been just field restrictions. I mean, maybe that necessitates you cut the pre-quarters round or something like that, which happened in the round after uh, the last clipped pool play game, right? They started the next round, so I don't know. Maybe a lot of times these are due to field size, like the fields that you can afford to have, or the number of fields that you have. You know, when you get into bracket play, teams often don't want buys, and so you end up with a lot of. That's when you have the highest demand for fields because teams are a little more apt to take buys during pool play.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, it's a tricky situation, and I think it's something that the tournament will hopefully look at because people definitely don't want to travel to California for 4 games.
Last thing is to take a quick look at our picks from last week and see how we did. We all picked UBC or Keith and I picked UBC and Oregon to make the final.
We gave the subs the top 2 seeds because we didn't
Moving
have
forward,
sub picks.
right. Moving forward, the subs are going to have a representative who makes picks for the week. That starts with warm up. Keith called Oregon to win, and I picked UBC. Is that true? I thought it was the other way around, Keith.
No,
Maybe
this
update
is
the
what
spreadsheet.
I went back and look. This is what we had.
Okay, so we discussed this incorrectly. So hey, look at that, a little birthday present for me. I didn't know that I picked UBC to take it down. Everybody picked slow, and the subs get the point for Cal. So lucky subs. Everybody ends up with how many points? Me and the subs have 19. Keith has 14.
Yep,
Tough
because I
not
didn't
to
get
pick
the
the
winner,
champ.
so I'm missing. Yeah, I'll make it up. I got plenty of time.
Yes, you will. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to go through some small ball, including some USAU news, World Games tryouts, and then we got Florida warm-up preview and streaming schedule coming your way. Stay with us. It's Deep Look. We're live on YouTube.
But you're not for me. I can't sleep lately. I'm just trying to find peace. Classic melodies. I just wanna be free. I'm sorry, darling. I can't breathe. There's no room for us. There's no room for us. I said, darling, can you see? There's no room for us.
You got to go check out those 2024 warm-up highlights. Get you hyped up for the weekend. Welcome back to Deep Look. Keith, before we go any further, we got to talk about the National Ultimate Training Camp.
Yeah, the National Ultimate Training Camp is celebrating their 25th year this year, and there's no better place for young players to make memories, new friends, and tremendous strides in their game. I know I personally learned so much in my 3 years as a camper there. I think back of we had jersey swaps that were a ton of fun, or we had a talent show. I was lip syncing like Avril Lavigne in the talent show, but nothing beats getting 6 friends together and scoring on the counselors in the campers versus counselors game. That's the high point of my Nutsy career, and you can help new athletes get to Nutsy and help make memories and have awesome experiences like those while helping yourself with Guts, which is the Global Ultimate Training School. These online courses and presentations provide great insight into various topics in Ultimate, and the proceeds go to the Nutsy Scholarship Fund. The upcoming courses include an evening with Mitch Dangler, who will help you learn the rules that trip up everybody. He'll be doing a Q&A as well. And there's also a Building a Business in the World of Ultimate panel. They're going to have luminaries on that panel, including our own Charlie Eisenhood. Charlie, you're going to be on the Building a Business panel. What are your thoughts going into it?
Well, I'm excited. It's going to be a blast. I've been to Nutsy one time to do kind of like a panel talk like this. It was not quite as specifically focused on business, but that was great to get up there and see the jersey swap and just 25 years. What a what a legacy. You think about all the amazing players who have gone through and developed their skills at Nutsy over time. Yeah, that's right, Keith. But yeah, I'm fired up. It's going to be me, Tina Booth, of course, who runs Nutsy, Adriana Withers, who's the founder of VC, and Rowan McDonald, who's been building his Excel Ultimate brand and just being kind of one of the most visible players in the sport. So that'll be the panel. I'm really looking forward to it. This is all happening. This guts stuff. It's all happening like now. So it's like a winter thing. You can sign up and watch online. Keith, you got the details for us?
Yeah, you can go ahead and see the full schedule of all the presentations that'll be happening. You can also find out how to register. That's at Nutsy, NUTC.net/winter-courses. So that's winter-courses after Nutsy.net. And get ready for Nutsy as well. That's coming this summer. Registration opens on February 28th, so a month from now. Don't miss it. And thank you to our friends at Nutsy for their support.
All right, time to play a little bit of small ball here on Deep Look. And kicking us off is the USAU working group notes. This is like the most interesting article that gets published on USA Ultimate every year, in my opinion. I always wait for this one because we get a sense of what is being discussed at USAU by the group that includes their staff members, players from the divisions, organizers from the divisions. They all get together, they have like a little summit, and they discuss all of these topics. So I want to go through some of the key stuff in each category, I suppose. Really quick, on the beach front, not too many changes, but they are considering plans for a youth mixed division at Beach Nationals this year, looking to bring U20 teams to the event this year in 2025. So in the spring, maybe we'll see some beach ultimate youth teams out there. I like to see that.
The kids deserve a chance to play on the sand.
And they, by the way, they explicitly said it won't start your eligibility clock. So don't worry about it messing up your college 5-year career. On the club front, few interesting things. They are discussing using a Swiss draw format for earlier TCT events. So like the pro elites. Maybe we're going to see some Swiss draw in the United States, Keith.
Beautiful. And it makes so much sense. Like when the
does.
rankings could not mean the seeding and rankings like mean nothing at that time. You have no information to go on. Might as well let the teams play it out. And if somebody gets a bad draw, they need to play their way out of it.
There's really no such a thing. Like with Swiss draw, there's no such thing. Like you're going to get power matched faster. You're going to play more competitive games. You're going to play a total variety of opponents. You're not going to see anybody a second time. And you play 6 games on the weekend, and it's great. Like you spend way less time playing blowout games. This is an obvious change, and Keith, you and I have been talking about this for literally years.
I'm for it, and we love seeing changes to tournament formats in the regular season. We're so for that.
Some other notes. They are discussing this academy model. I don't know if we've talked about this. I think we have. Basically, the idea that players can move up and down between like a city's A team and their developmental team in club. So, like, what are the comparable teams that are doing this right now? I think the Boston teams are doing this. What's the Dig B team called?
Scoop. There's
right.
Scoop
So it's
is
like
the Dig B team. There was a developmental model in I don't know if they actually still do this in like the Houston area. I think they had like 3 teams or 4 teams.
Right. That's right.
You could play your way up and down.
So a quoting from the article, the proposal was suggested by the community as a way to allow increased roster flexibility for teams that have a closely related developmental team. While no decisions were made, the group will continue to work out the idea in 2025. But this is my one complaint. I feel like things get put into practice way too slowly at USAU. Like, why don't they just do this? I know you have to have rules and you have to set it up in the guidelines, but like, we don't really need the club guidelines for another like 2 or 3 months. Just make it happen. Like, I don't see what the downside is to letting teams have roster flexibility and move practice players, onto series roster, for the B team maybe, but they're playing A team tournaments, and you don't have this problem of hitting the cutoff and having to pick a team that you then are stuck with for the rest of the year. Like, if you have players who are kind of at that margin of being on your top city team or the second team, like allowing flexibility there just makes a lot of sense to me.
I don't mind the concept. I'm surprised that this is an area in which USA Ultimate is thinking about investing their resources into becoming some sort of saying we might manage this process that presumably teams would have to have a formal relationship that they would announce or make clear to USA Ultimate through some sort of application or something like that. Just saying like we are associated teams and thus people can move between our rosters. I don't. I'm surprised that this is a thing that they're investing energy into focusing on, because it doesn't strike me as solving a major issue that people might have with club, which primarily it feels like have to do more with travel, scheduling, expenses, competition. They talk about later in the working group, they talked about growth of the women's division. Like those seem like much bigger issues. So I'm surprised that this is one that is meriting a lot of discussion, but maybe there's upside that I don't see, or certainly these are a smart group of people, and a lot of these are elite club players and leaders in their community that are involved in these discussions. So sure, they're being thoughtful about it. I was surprised that this was a an item that was getting a lot of tick as opposed to some of these other more pressing issues.
My thought is this is a better player development model, and it will improve the overall quality of rosters, because I think one of the problems, we've seen this trend towards way more practice players on top club teams, right? So you have this club team and they have 10, 15 practice players in some cases. And those players, in many cases, are then therefore not playing in the series
Mhm.
because they're not making the roster for their top team. And then they're committed already to playing for that team and they're not allowed to play with another team. So in this case, what would happen is these players would be spending more time getting reps with the second team as one of the better players on that team as a leader, but maybe they're practicing and playing a tournament or two with the top team to get development there, because playing with better players, like clearly a lot of players want that. We see so many players choosing a practice player option over having an actual team that they play for. That to me is just like you're adapting to what teams are already doing in a way that improves everybody's experience. And I think will probably increase the quality and quantity of teams that play this series, which, is financially good for USAU.
Imagine under this new system, the academy team outperforms the A team. Like we very rarely, but occasionally see. And suddenly the flow just reverses direction. Everybody's like, never mind, this is the real A team.
Zach says in the comments, it would make the path to elite club teams more realistic for a lot of fringe players. Jim says too many players get left off of rosters every summer. But Alex asked, do we know that elite teams want to manage multiple rosters worth of players? For teams with established coaches, they might be able to, but otherwise might not have the bandwidth to manage double the number of players. But I don't think you necessarily have to have the elite club teams managing the lower team. I think it's more about like having communication between the captains and coaches of those two respective teams saying, hey, we want to have this crossover for this, 4 or 5 players who we want to have mostly playing here, but some there. I think let's try it. Like, again, I don't see the downside here for really anybody.
Or maybe this opens up a chance for now, once these teams have a formal relationship. Now, maybe instead of each team has a coach, but now maybe you have a general manager. You have somebody who actually is
Listen, we
acting
have
as
real
oversight for the
clubs.
entirety. Now,
I
now I'm
you
curious.
you I
Now I'm
feel like you're
curious.
almost joking, but I actually think that it's a good
I'm
idea.
not really.
Yeah.
I could definitely
Like,
see that
look
being
at how
implemented in some
clubs
places.
work in UK soccer, for instance. Like, this is the model
Mhm.
that makes sense for Ultimate, where you have this ability to have players, at various tiers. And if somebody's kicking ass on a lower tier team, maybe they get brought up to play with the next team up for a tournament. And then, wow, they're kicking ass there too. It's like minor league baseball, right? You could fly right up to the top team if you're playing great. Sometimes you need more than a 2-day tryout weekend to actually see how good somebody is. This just like massively reduces the volatility of like one weekend of tryouts and having to fight through the politics and everything of, there's like 5 open spots on the top club team.
Good, but I'm more intrigued now.
Michael says Mallard and Mallard 2 had a relationship with a president that ran both teams' financials. Well, Mallard 2, friend of the pod. We love him.
Which one's the A team in that release? I don't remember. they're both good, I think.
Love this idea. I would just advocate again. Make the change now. Let's see what happens. Use this year as an experiment. Say we're going to do this. If you want to be involved in this academy model, you have to submit an application and the teams have to agree to these rules, whatever. Like, just do it. Don't worry about getting everything perfect. Like, let's innovate.
Break things. Charlie's got that tech.
I mean, they have the idea. Things. They've been talking about it for 6 months or something. Like, just do it. Okay, I've made my point. Roster flexibility is being re-deadlined for the women's division. Women matching players will have roster flexibility until July 30th, which is the Wednesday before the US Open. Male matching players have roster flexibility until June 25th, the Wednesday before the Pro League Challenge. I guess I'm not totally sure why this is important, but seems good. Seems fine.
To me, yeah, I don't necessarily understand the difference, but I trust that the people who are involved do. And to me, the biggest thing is that we are seeing, instead of one size fits all, let's make things that fit for the women's division in particular, which has different needs than the men's division and then the mixed division. So that to me is the most important thing here.
Big one here for you, Keith. This applies to multiple divisions. The club working group met with the college and rankings working groups to discuss the possible implementation of a probabilistic model for nationals bid allocation in 2026. Cody Mills and Scott Dunham, they're getting hype right
now. For those who aren't aware, I mean, essentially the probabilistic model would weigh the strength of your region as a whole rather than just the teams that are above the cutoff. So
sort of,
if you have, I mean, that's a rough outline. So like if you have 3 teams just outside the cutoff, that's better than having one team at the cutoff line, if that makes sense.
Right. The idea is that you look at the probability that a given team is the best team for that last spot in the algorithm, basically, let's say. So rather than having a hard line cutoff of, top 16, it would be like if one region had the 16th team, but then let's say the South Central had teams 17, 18, and 19. The combined probability of one of those 3 teams actually being the best team compared to the team in the 16th spot is higher. Therefore, the South Central would get a bid instead of, let's say, the Northwest. There's articles up on Ultiworld that get into this. If you want to read about it, just search probabilistic bid model Ultiworld, and you can read like the mathematical justification for why this makes sense. It just reduces the biggest thing is that it reduces the incentives for teams to throw games within their region because they want to prop up one team that's inside the cutoff, because it's more that your whole region is sort of weighed. This doesn't mean that a region with, teams 30 through 40, all of those teams are, from the same region. Let's say it's a random hypothetical. It doesn't mean they're going to get a bid just because they have depth. Like, you have to have high quality depth. It will probably only change 1 or 2 bids, but it does kind of reduce the one team getting really lucky effect.
And I think when you look at the possibility of that in tandem with, you're talking about Swiss draw and with the draw model that they're using at the World Cup style draw that they're using at nationals, which again did not get the thumbs down yet. There was discussed in this meeting, and no one had a problem with it. I think it's just further USA Ultimate going in the direction of saying, look, we acknowledge that the rankings are not always the best way to decipher which team is the best, and we acknowledge that these rankings don't always do that in a good way. So we are building in other systems that account for that. So I think that's a good sign.
Other quick notes, they're talking about trying to help grow the women's division, including a matching or mentoring program for women's leaders to discuss important topics and a volunteer role focused on women's division's growth. There's also going to be a best practice for the mixed division, which will require each player on the line to signal their gender match if requested by the opposing team. And then in a very one sentence final paragraph, other topics included the video review discussion, postseason registration timelines, and a larger mixed club nationals format. Whoa, can we expand on that a little bit, please? Video review, like we've talked about how the rules right now don't really allow for it particularly. I think that should change. Certainly can change. Larger mixed club nationals format. Interesting, Keith. Only mixed goes to 20 teams?
It feels like the division that probably most would be best served by having a 20 team.
I think it's pretty
nationals.
Comfortably the biggest division. And getting bigger.
And feels like the difference between the teams that are in and the teams that are out from a competition standpoint is the smallest.
Right.
Each year. So
right.
Could make sense.
Not much to report from the college side of things. They are considering restructuring the developmental division, and they're also considering changing the D3 enrollment cutoff number. We've been discussing that a little bit in the Ultiworld Discord, which is, by the way, now available for all Ultiworld subscribers, including mini subscribers. So if you're already getting our bonus pods, you can now get into the Ultiworld Discord as well. We've been talking about this D3 cutoff number a little bit this morning. And I posed the question, like, let's say you moved it from 7,500 to 10,000. How does that change a division? How many D1 teams with enrollments between 7,500 and 10,000, or let's just say below 10,000, period, are competitive at regionals? I don't think the number's very high. So I could see this making a lot of sense.
And teams would have the ability to still opt into Division 1 if they wanted to, I believe, under the new system. So I think expanding the breadth of D3 is probably in the best interest of the division. And I don't envision it harming Division 1 very much because D1 teams can still opt into D1 if they want. So this seems like a good solution to helping the Division 3 ecosystem.
And then finally, youth. This is probably the one with the most change and the most to discuss. We're actually going to devote our subscriber bonus segment out the back specifically to this topic. They released the youth survey results. Changes that they are discussing right now. They are going to make they're going to make like Division 1 and Division 2 at YCCs for any division with more than 24 teams. So like fully separate divisions competitively. There's no like, D2 teams couldn't play up and win the D1 tournament. They're also going to consider how to include more teams overall in YCCs, try to encourage participation in summer regional events. And so we'll get into that more, Keith, but I think they are recognizing the number one problem right now, which is that YCCs is kind of capped out at its current capacity, and they need to be able to address that.
This is a key. This feels like the most substantial, which is why we're going to give it its own segment. But there's a lot to chew on and a lot of potential impacts as YCC continues to be such a focal point of USA Ultimate's presence in the youth ultimate scene.
Innocent says bringing VAR to natties would be utter woke nonsense. I didn't know VAR was now considered woke, but comments letting me know that that's how it is. So let's see. I think that's it for that topic. Keith, what's next in small ball? That was big ball, but we got a
couple of things coming up this weekend just to make note of. The World Games tryouts for the U.S. national team taking place this weekend. So we did our draft of who Charlie and I would pick from the potential tryout pool, which has changed a little bit and become formalized now. So there's some players who moved in and out. of the tryout pool. But Charlie and I did the draft, and I absolutely smashed Charlie according to the subscribers in the Discord. My team
Whack, dude.
I mean, maybe the biggest blowout in a one-on-one competition between us in the history of
Whatever.
the show.
I'm telling you, wait until the teams come out and I have more players picked.
Okay,
Everybody's
Jolie Krebs and
their
Marquez
thoughts
Brownlee
when
are
the
got to carry
MKBHD
you.
makes the team.
All that said, though, that is a good way to get a sense of where we're at, and we'll follow up on World Games tryouts, of course, after the fact. Talk about where those teams are. Also, the USA Ultimate Organizers Conference coming up this weekend too. So, chance for the organizers to gather in person. This is like an on and off. Sometimes it's virtual, sometimes it's in person in Colorado event, but hopefully organizers are able to learn from each other, pick up some new things, provide feedback to USA Ultimate, and some good news comes out of this conference because the relationship between LDOs and USA Ultimate is a vital one, and one we talk about on the show a lot. And there's certainly a lot of things that we think could be done better, and hopefully this conference helps arrive at some of those things.
I'm feeling like USAU is starting to like take the feedback from the community and actually like implement change more. Like this year's working group notes makes me feel positive, but still there is more that can be done. So always love to see these conferences. Last thing in small ball before we talk Florida warm up, Ultiworld comment section. We're killing it. Is done. It's
We're
so
tired of y'all.
interesting.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we don't want no more accountability. For longtime readers of Ultiworld, you will know that back in 2012 through 2016-ish, we had vibrant, intense comment sections with people, going 70 comments deep on a topic. And kind of a few things like the rise of social media, Twitter particularly, and Reddit, along with general norms about like online commenting changing, along with a stupid, misguided effort by me personally to try to switch us over to a forum-based comment section before switching back to regular comments, has kind of just yielded like more and more decrease in comments over time. So lately, most articles don't get comments. Even really like sort of controversial, interesting articles only get a couple comments, whereas they used to get 25, 50, 100. People are just talking about articles in other spots, like in the Ultiworld Discord, or on Reddit, or on Twitter. And so it just has felt like they have been sort of not particularly useful. So we made the decision, let's get rid of them. We're going to open up our Discord to mini subscribers as well, as I mentioned earlier. And so we already think it's like the best place to talk about Ultimate on the internet. And I think that's going to become even more the case. I think it's a perfect encapsulation of the whole situation, Keith. Noah, on the article about us removing comment sections, says this is terrible news. And I replied and I said, why do you feel that way? I'm genuinely curious because comment sections have felt increasingly unimportant. No answer. So like, I don't know. Like if no one's using them, why do we have them? They take up space and make the site slower to load. So we're killing them. But we'll still listen to your comments here on the YouTube.
Yeah, there are plenty of ways to get in touch with us, but that was one that was not being used, so it seems silly to wish it were there. There's not a lot of content we're going to miss out on, but we still fully encourage you to email us or DM us, or of course communicate with us in the Discord where I'm at every day. So you can definitely get a hold of us at Ultiworld and give us your feedback. And participate in the discussion. I know that used to be part of the big drive of comments, so that there could be dialogue, and that just doesn't exist on the site anymore. It exists in other spaces, so it's still to be had.
And you can always email us as well at deeplook@ultiworld.com. All right, Florida warm-up. It's coming up this weekend. The early season major for the men's division. ready to go. They had to move the tournament to Gainesville because they lost their field rentals in Tampa. It's been a kind of a pain for everybody because Gainesville is about 2 hours from Tampa. People lost out on Airbnb deposits, hotel deposits. It's been a bit of a headache, but looks like the fields are going to be awesome and the weather's going to be great. So I think everyone's still going to have a great time. We are, of course, live streaming this weekend. Maybe let's just kick things off with the streaming schedule. Let's take a look at what we got coming up. We're doubling up on the number of cameras this year. So here's your Friday schedule. Cornell and Emory, Texas A&M versus Wisconsin, Purdue versus Tulane, BYU versus WashU. Super excited to see how that WashU team holds up against that BYU team coming off of a very nice SBI. Brown and Pitt, Carleton and Utah State. That's Utah State hype is real. Texas versus UVM and Brown versus WashU. So that's day one. Let's go to day two. Take a look at our Saturday schedule, another packed day. Minnesota versus Texas, Florida State versus McGill, Pitt and Minnesota, Carleton and UAH, Georgia, Utah State, and Michigan, UMass, followed by quarterfinals rounds. And we'll get all four quarters, both semis and the final, semis and finals, of course, on Sunday. So, Keith, there it is, streaming schedule. What are you looking forward to on this packed weekend?
Well, like you mentioned, it's packed. I mean, of course, I want to get overall impressions of the teams as much as anything else, which will be done over the breadth of the weekend. But there's some individual matchups that are pretty enticing. Pittsburgh, Minnesota, but I think the one that jumps out to me the most, I think, is Michigan, UMass. I'm like pretty high on both of those teams coming into the season. So I'm very interested in how that matchup plays out. Texas, Vermont, another one I would highlight. Those are maybe my top two matchups going into this streaming schedule.
Yeah, I'm excited for that Texas Vermont game too. I want to see what Texas looks like. We know Vermont's going to be really solid. So this is always just a great weekend. We have so much team diversity. Great time to upgrade to your subscription to standard or all access to be able to watch all of these games, broadcasting live on ultiworld.com. And yeah, like, who's the favorite coming into this weekend? Do you feel like there's an obvious favorite? I feel like there's like
yes, I do,
7 teams that could win. Yeah. So who do you think?
I mean, I think UMass is the favorite going into the weekend. I mean, they're the highest ranked team going in, and they're all basically the next 4 teams in our rankings or so are right after them. So this is by no means saying that they're like a lock to win the tournament, but I think they have to be considered the most likely team. If Vegas was putting up the odds, they would have the best odds. I think that's right. I think, to me, that's very clear.
But Carleton hype is going to be very high. I could see actually betting markets pushing Carleton ahead because of how good their rookie class is. I mean, right now in the rankings, UMass is 5, Carleton 6, Pittsburgh 7, Vermont 8, WashU 11, Georgia 12, Minnesota 13, Michigan 14, Texas 15, and all those teams at warm up. So like, it's packed.
Definitely. It's hard to exactly nail down who you think is going to make it into that Final Four. There's usually a surprise team that, for whatever reason, has a good run. And then the other 3, I think, usually come from your obvious tier 1 teams coming into the tournament. But I think that group's pretty big. So it's definitely bigger than 3 teams, and it's bigger than 4 too. So, Texas is a team we talked about being underranked. I think that's going to be reflected in our next set of power rankings. But even down the line, could we see one of these teams that isn't necessarily at the top of the rankings come out with a surprise performance? Brown, how will they look in their start to the year? Could we see Texas A&M or Tulane, who there was some talk about, Wisconsin, Huntsville? Like, could one of these schools play their way into the top 25 or even a better result along the way? Or could we see a team that feels like they're being undercounted, like a Texas or Georgia, come into this tournament and make a run into the semis or the finals?
Remember, warm up, my favorite college tournament of the season, doesn't play traditional pools. They kind of have like these hybrid pools where a few teams will play each other, but then also a couple of like quote unquote out of pool opponents. And you get into the bracket based on your record. And then the tiebreaker is the algorithm. So they like run the USAU algorithm on all of the games at the tournament. So if you go 6-0, you're going to make the bracket, no problem. Typically, you get in with a 5-1 record, and then 4-2 teams typically have to win the algorithm lottery. So you basically end up with the best teams. Although once in a while, a team that's maybe slightly worse than one of the 4-2 teams gets in because they go 5-1 and they had an easier schedule. And it's sort of like power matched a little bit. So better teams play more difficult schedules on average. It's a really cool format, and it makes for a really fun weekend where you can get some big surprises for just who is going to make the quarters. Some people talking big in the chat already. Gabriel says Vermont is going to choke again, quarters at best. Kale says Emory's making semis. Okay, that's big talk. Emory making semis. Keith, I know you like the sound of that.
I'm wearing my Emory gear right now. I see Jacob with Brown's gonna win. Oh, that's a strong take.
That would
I'll
be
be
a
curious.
shock result for sure.
Do I see this correctly? An account named Men's Ultimate Club at USF asking, "Will USF get a win?" Is that shade at their own team? Shouldn't you come in with USF is getting a dub?
I think that's probably Dario in the chat right there, but I don't know. Dario's the TD of warm up, and
they lost the home cooking
with USF. I know that's the tough part. You don't get to sleep in your own bed unless you can make that 2-hour drive twice a day. Is Dev going to steal Chill's bid to nationals this year? Vermont Dev hype is going crazy in the chat. All right, Kale calling his shot. UMass Vermont and Emory Texas. That's your semis. That's bold.
It's bold. We do have a subscriber making picks for us, but if we didn't, we could take those. That'll be our backup option.
I want to know. David said, "I'm once again asking that Florida warm up revive the Wisco versus Florida game. For many years, Wisconsin and Florida would play a night game, usually on Friday at warm up, and of course, those two teams were the heavy hitters in college ultimate 15 years ago, and they kept doing it for years after that. Even when Wisco and Florida, like for a while, like Florida basically fell off pretty hard. Wisco has gotten slowly worse over time, but there would be some surprises in those games, and it was just like this awesome rivalry game between these two like classic college ultimate programs. But we don't really see it anymore. So hopefully, when they go back to USF and they're under the lights, we can revive the tradition, because I think that would actually be like potentially a competitive game even in 2025. Wisconsin's the better team, but not massively so. All right, let's see what else we got here. Jacob's calling his semis Brown, Michigan, UAH, Florida. Florida getting in would be stuff of legend. I'm ready to get surprised by a Florida team. I have low expectations for the whole group this year.
The hate is strong right now, Charlie.
I mean, I think somebody just said in the Discord that it's been 10 years since the University of Florida made nationals.
It's been a long time.
That's wild.
Let's get to the picks.
Okay. So we're picking semis or finals?
Let's do semis, finals, winner.
So tough this tournament. Okay. I'm going for semis. I'm going Georgia, UMass, Vermont, Texas.
Okay.
I'm leaving Carleton out. Maybe that's wrong. I'm leaving so many teams out. It's impossible. Obviously, the bold pick there is taking Georgia in. But I think people are writing them off a little too quick. They do lose a little bit of firepower, but they were really good last year. And as one of the Southern-based teams, they're going to have more reps than a lot of those Northern teams. That makes a big difference at warm-up. Who you got, Keith?
All right. I already said that I've marked UMass as the favorite, so I'll have them in. Um, then I'll also go. I am gonna go Carleton. I'm gonna go Michigan, and the last spot is so hard. Uh to me, I like your Southern logic with Georgia, but I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go Pitt as my fourth team.
So UMass, Carleton, Michigan, Pitt.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. What about Texas?
So we literally only have one
Yeah,
shared team. That shows you how much uncertainty there is for this tournament and like where we are at this point with these teams. Like, and nobody's picking Minnesota.
UMass is our only share team. Minnesota, I like their potential over the course of the year, but they lost a lot from last year's team. So I think I'd be surprised if they come out of the gates that hot.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, who you got in the finals, Keith?
I'm going with UMass and cut in the final.
I'm going UMass, Vermont. All Northeast.
Oh, Northeast, huh?
Yep. Spoiling the Southern team's day.
Very interesting. I mean, this Vermont team is super deep. And maybe Zach Watson Stevens is kind of the star, I guess. Interesting group. It'd be a fascinating final. Hopefully all the teams stay at the tournament and plan to be there through the duration.
Do we get to keep killing them
I guess
for
I
that
can't
for
blame
years
them
to come?
for years. But I guess I can't this year, given that there is like a 2-hour change in your travel. I guess maybe I can't blame a team if they're like, oh, we plan to leave at when the finals might have been, not accounting for a 2-hour drive to the airport or whatever. So I wonder if we're gonna have to deal with that.
So yeah, I've got UMass to win. I'm going chalk.
I'm also gonna take UMass to win. The subs, however, you have the New England final, but there's another New England team, Charlie. Brown. The subs are taking Brown to win the tournament.
To win the whole thing?
Wow.
To
win the whole thing. They think who needs Jock Nissen and who needs Leo Gordon? Not me.
They'll be fine. They're just losing 2 all club, all college, all Americans. No problem.
Who needs them? And this comes from Jay Dizzy, who's our
next man up
picking. He's got Brown over Vermont, and you tell me what's more shocking: Brown winning this tournament or Florida making the semifinals, which is another one of Jay Dizzy's picks. Florida and UAH in the semis, and Brown over Michigan.
Those are bold. Those are bold.
They're bold.
They're very bold. But we should we should pay a penalty if the subs outscore us this weekend.
Which do you think is which would you be more shocked by? Brown winning this tournament or Florida making the semifinals?
Florida making the semifinals. Brown is one of the best coach teams in the country. Them winning would be definitely a big surprise, but like, this is a program now. They're still going to be good. So Florida, that would be completely out of nowhere for me.
Yeah, what a pronouncement that one would be.
What should we do as a punishment? We should have to do some. It can't be too crazy because it's just 1 week.
Jay Dizzy's in the chat. It's Jacob, and he says, if my picture are better than yours, I expect apologies. We can do that. Formal apologies on the show.
Formal apologies. We can have him on. We'll have him on, and we will apologize in person on the show, live on YouTube. All right. So there's the picks. Keith and I have UMass. Jacob and the subscribers have Brown, and that is warm up for you. So don't miss the streams all weekend. It's going to be a blast. Before we get off the topic and go to our question of the week, I just want to quickly note the T-Town Throwdown happened this past weekend. Barry getting the win in both divisions. How about the Barry Bucks men's team blowing out LSU, beating Alabama, the 1 seed in the final 15-12. Berry hype up big. I mean, they go undefeated. D3 team.
I mean, we were just saying who needs Jock Nissen? Who needs Colin Hill? Not Barry, apparently. Very impressive.
Georgia Tech wins the Florida Winter Classic. So, we know this team's going to be pretty good. Winning this tournament is no surprise, and it's not like they played a lot of really strong teams, but big wins, big margins. They win over Florida in the final 10-5.
Pecking order in the Southeast. Georgia Tech's men's division team, I believe, is playing this weekend at kickoff, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at the
they're
kickoff.
the only. I think they were there with UNC and mostly Carolina teams, and I think Case Western. I think maybe it was going to be.
Yeah,
there.
so kickoff.
But mostly it's other AC teams.
Unofficial picks, not for record keeping, for Carolina kickoff. Top seeds: UNC, Georgia Tech, UNC Wilmington, NC State, UNC Charlotte, Ohio State. 16-team event. Let's just pick finals and winner. You just going to go chalk? Because I think I'm going to.
I don't know who the 2 seed is, but I'm going UNC over Wilmington.
I'm going UNC over Tech. Tech's the 2 seed.
Nah, I'm on the Wilmington hype train.
You are. That's true. The women's Carolina kickoff was this past. Women's kickoff was this past weekend. UNC dominated against a weaker field, so no surprise for the back-to-back national champs trying to go crazy and win another one. All right, that is it. Enjoy warm up this weekend. It all starts Friday morning. We are ready for our question of the week. Let's go.
All right, this week's question of the week comes in from Jonathan via email. He said, if you drafted a rest of the World Games roster to face Team USA, and we can decide if we want to pick only from teams that are actually going to attend the World Games, or if we just want to use the entire rest of the globe. I will say we're excluding Canada. Could the international team, the All-Stars, beat Team USA?
Well, I
don't think I have to do this exercise to say yes.
Exactly. I think we've already seen that the U.S. World Games team has lost games to country-based teams, not a all-world team. So I think it's very clear that the world team would be the favorite. So, Keith, should we just go back and forth and pick our...
we can rattle one off here. We could rattle. I think we could rattle off probably 14.
Let's just rattle it off. Let's just rattle it off.
Okay. Let me get Manu.
Go ahead. Okay, I'll take Vale. So the Cardenas twins.
I'll take Livka.
I'll take Cat Phillips. So we're all FP or women's division so far.
I'll take Don Desmarais.
Good pick. I will take Rob Andrews.
I was just thinking about it. Maybe we need to get some Australians in here. I'll take Connor McHale.
I'll take Conrad Schloer.
Oh, good one. Good call. I'll take let's go back to Germany. I'll take Anna Gerner.
Oh, I like that. Who's the next best Australian player in 2025? Is it McGuckin? Probably take McGuckin.
Probably. Yeah, that's
like
probably
Tullett,
right.
maybe. Does Tullett still make this roster? He probably does. Edward Stevens had him ranked as the best player at 2022 World Games, but he's starting to get a little bit older.
We're not going to be short on people to pick, I don't think.
No,
I mean,
you're
right.
You get the point. This is going to be a sick team.
You get the point. We don't have to finish it. Even if
still
you
right
just
there.
Limited, like it would hurt your women matching players to lose Vale and Manu if we just limited it to teams that are going to be at Worlds. Yeah, I guess you lose the Belgian men's players too, but like, you get Elliot Bonet, and
Yeah.
there's a bunch of there are a lot of good players to still
It's
pick up.
tough.
We haven't touched Japan yet. I think this team would be the favorite. I think that the World Game specific lineup, it's maybe closer to a coin flip. Somebody said Tobe, like Tobe DeCrana. I think he's another person that we would have picked if we kept going. So don't worry, I think he would have gotten there. But yeah, I don't think the US would be the favorites.
It would definitely be. It would be like world minus 1.5. I mean, both teams are going to be amazing, super super talented. But I think that all world definitely becomes the favorite. Let's see. I wanted to hit. There was a comment here. Excuse me. Courtly says the Georgia Tech captains fumbled the Florida warm-up bids. Oh no. I was surprised they were playing kickoff, not warm-up. But maybe that's what it was. You got to get that logistics person figured out. Come on, Tech.
Well, I coached at Georgia Tech in the women's division over a decade ago, a long time ago. But I feel like my team's mantra was there's no problem that can't be solved with a spreadsheet. And so if that attitude is maintained at Tech, I don't know how they messed this up.
All right. Give us a like and subscribe or you'll ruin my birthday. And make sure you join us in the Discord for our subscriber bonus segment where we go deep on the USAU youth survey results and maybe what the next phase of youth growth needs to look like at the national level. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. Join us in the Discord. Many subscribers can get in now. If you're any subscription, join us in the Discord. We'd love to see you there. Talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.